If you're an INFJ, you've probably heard a lot of things about yourself. Some kind, some confusing, and some that hit you in a way you couldn't quite explain. Over time, those messages start to build up. They shape how people treat you. And sometimes, without even noticing, they shape how you see yourself. Maybe someone told you that you're too emotional. Maybe you were made to feel like your quiet nature was a problem. Or maybe they said you're special in a way that made you feel more like a symbol than a real person. These aren't just opinions. They're lies the world tells INFJs, sometimes without meaning to, sometimes without even knowing it. These lies come from misunderstanding. People see your kindness, your silence, your thoughtfulness, and they guess what that must mean. But most of the time, they guess wrong. They put you in a box that doesn't fit. Then they act surprised when you don't match the version of you they created in their head. It's not always loud or cruel. Sometimes it's subtle. A comment here. A joke there. A look when you react too strongly. Or not strongly enough. You start to wonder if maybe you are the problem. Maybe you do feel too much. Maybe you should toughen up. Or be more like everyone else. But the truth is, those are not your thoughts. They were handed to you by a world that doesn't understand what it's like to feel this much, think this deeply, or carry this kind of inner world. This video is about taking those lies and breaking them down, naming them for what they are, and maybe giving you permission to stop carrying them. Let's start with the first one, the one almost every INFJ hears sooner or later. Lie number 1, you're too sensitive, overly emotional. This one shows up early, sometimes in childhood. You cried easily. You took things seriously. You asked questions that adults didn't want to answer. Instead of helping you understand your feelings, people told you to lighten up, stop overreacting, or get over it. As you got older, it didn't stop. You'd share how something made you feel, and someone would roll their eyes or say, "You're too sensitive." Maybe you cried at movies, got overwhelmed in loud places, or needed extra time alone, and instead of support, you got labels. Dramatic, moody, soft. But none of that is true. You're not weak. You're not fragile. You feel deeply, and that's different. INFJs are built with emotional depth. You don't just react. You absorb. You notice small shifts in tone, body language, and energy. You care about things other people overlook. That's not a flaw. It's a strength. The problem isn't that you're too sensitive. The problem is that most people have no idea how to handle sensitivity, in themselves or anyone else. So they shame it. They label it. They push it away. That's not your burden to carry. Being sensitive doesn't mean you're unstable. It means you pick up on what others miss. It means you feel the undercurrent, not just the surface. It means you care, maybe more than the world is comfortable with. But that doesn't make you wrong. There's nothing weak about empathy. There's nothing dramatic about being moved by beauty or hurt by cruelty. And there's nothing too much about feeling life fully. You don't need to toughen up. The world needs to learn how to soften where it matters. Lie number 2. You don't use logic. You're ruled by feelings. This one usually comes from people who don't understand how INFJs make decisions. They see your compassion. They hear the way you talk about meaning, connection, and emotion. And because of that, they assume you're not logical. Like your empathy cancels out your ability to think clearly. But that's a lie. INFJs are thinkers. Deep ones. You don't just feel, you analyze. You reflect. You break things apart in your mind and put them back together from every possible angle. You might not always show it on the outside, but inside, your brain is busy. You're sorting through memories, checking patterns, asking silent questions. And yes, you also ask, How will this affect others? But that doesn't mean you ignore reason. It means you use more than just reason. You combine logic with intuition. You weigh facts against values. You don't just ask what makes sense. You ask what makes sense and feels right. That balance is what makes your insights so powerful. The truth is, people are uncomfortable with this kind of thinking. They want answers that are clean, fast, simple. But you don't operate that way. You want answers that are true, even if they take time, even if they're complicated. You've probably been in situations where you suggested a decision that felt right based on your gut, and others dismissed it. Later, when things unfolded the way you expected, you didn't say, "I told you so." You just felt the weight of being right and not believed. Your logic doesn't always look like charts or hard numbers. It looks like asking hard questions. It looks like quiet analysis. It looks like trusting a pattern you can't fully explain, but that your track record proves right. You're not ruled by feelings. You're guided by values. And that's not weak logic. It's a deeper kind of intelligence most people don't recognize, until they wish they had listened to you sooner. Lie number 3. You're mysterious, unapproachable, hard to understand. People often describe INFJs this way, and not always as a compliment. You might have been told you're hard to read, or that you keep too much to yourself. Some people even act like you're doing it on purpose, as if being misunderstood is a strategy or an act. But this idea, that you're distant or difficult, is a lie. What people see as mystery is often just your natural need to protect yourself. It's not that you don't want to connect. It's that you've learned to be careful about who you open up to. INFJs tend to carry more than they show. You feel things deeply, think things through, and experience life on a level that's hard to explain in casual conversation. So when someone asks, "What's on your mind?" you might hesitate. Not because you're hiding something, but because you know your full answer might overwhelm them. And when you stay quiet, people start to guess. They create stories about who you are. Some think you're cold. Others think you're hiding something. But the truth is, you're just being selective. You don't open your heart to people who haven't earned it. That's not being difficult. That's being safe. INFJs also have a hard time trusting that others will really listen. Not just to words, but to what those words mean. You've probably had experiences where you shared something personal and someone dismissed it, laughed at it, or changed the subject. Over time, that teaches you to keep more to yourself. So no, you're not unapproachable. You're just not easy to fake it with. And that's not a flaw. That's a filter. The people who take the time to understand you, really understand you, don't find you mysterious. They find you honest and loyal and full of depth. And that's who you've always been, even when the world didn't get it. Lie number 4. You want perfection, you're unrealistic. This lie shows up in different ways. Someone might say you're being too idealistic, or that your expectations are too high. Maybe you've been told to just let things go, or be more realistic. But underneath those comments is a judgment that wanting better is a problem. What people don't realize is that INFJs aren't chasing perfect. You're chasing alignment. You want your actions to match your values. You want your relationships to feel honest. You want your work to mean something. That's not perfectionism. That's purpose. Yes, you can be intense. You care about the details. You see the cracks in things that others ignore. But that doesn't mean you expect everything to be flawless. It means you want things to feel real. True. Worth your time and energy. This lie usually comes from people who are comfortable settling. They're fine with good enough. So when you speak up, ask for more, or push for something better, they assume you're being difficult, when really you're being honest. And it's not just about other people. You hold yourself to these same standards, sometimes too much. You push yourself hard. You expect yourself to be calm, kind, wise, productive, all at once. And when you fall short, you don't give yourself much grace. But here's the truth. Wanting meaning is not unrealistic. Wanting your life to feel connected to something deeper is not asking for too much. It's asking for what matters. You don't need to lower your standards. You need to be around people and in spaces that match your standards, or at least respect them. Because what you're looking for isn't perfection. It's truth. And the world needs more of that, not less. Line number 5. You're always giving. You never need help or rest. This one is sneaky, because it often comes from admiration. People see how kind you are, how much you support others, how much you show up even when you're tired. And over time, they start to believe that's just who you are. Someone who's always okay. Someone who doesn't need anything back. But that's a lie. You do get tired. You do feel drained. You do break down, sometimes alone, sometimes quietly, sometimes with no one there to hold you the way you hold others. INFJs are givers by nature. You see what people need. You feel their stress, their fear, their pain. And before they even ask, you're already trying to ease the weight. That makes you a great friend, partner, or co-worker. But it also puts you at risk, because the world will keep taking if you don't say stop. People often forget that your strength comes at a cost. They don't see how much you're holding in. They don't know how much emotional energy it takes to support others without letting yourself fall apart. And they rarely ask if you're okay, because you make it look easy. But you're not endless. You're not immune to burnout. And you're not selfish for needing rest, help, or space. You don't have to wait until you're empty to ask for something. You don't have to earn love by giving more than you can afford. And you don't have to keep proving your worth by putting yourself last. You're allowed to receive. You're allowed to rest. You're allowed to say, I need help, even if no one's ever offered it before. Because being a giver doesn't mean becoming invisible. It means learning how to give to yourself with the same care you give to others, and refusing to believe the lie that you were ever meant to go without. Lie number 6. You are rare, special, almost mystical, superhuman. This one might sound like a compliment, and at first it can feel like one. People talk about how INFJs are rare, magical, deeply intuitive, or wise beyond their years. You have probably seen words like empath, healer, or soul reader attached to your type. And yes, there's truth in your depth and intuition. But this kind of praise can turn into pressure. Being treated like you're not human, like you're some kind of emotional supercomputer, creates distance. People expect you to always understand them. Always be calm. Always rise above the noise. And when you don't, they're shocked, disappointed, even judgmental. You're allowed to be messy. You're allowed to make mistakes. You're allowed to have days when your empathy runs out, when your intuition is off, when your emotions spill out in ways you can't control. But this lie, that you're some perfect version of a person, makes it harder to be seen clearly. People project their hopes onto you. They expect you to save them. And in the process, they forget that you're still figuring things out too. You become the one people go to when they're lost, but rarely the one they check on. They say things like, you always know what to do, or you're stronger than most. And that sounds nice, until you're in pain and no one offers help, because they assume you'll handle it like you always do. This kind of myth builds walls. It isolates you. It makes you afraid to be vulnerable, to admit when you don't know the answer, to ask for support. And that isolation can feel heavy, like you're carrying the weight of everyone else's needs on your back. You're not here to live up to a fantasy. You're here to live as yourself, full of nuance, contradiction, and growth. You don't need to be rare to be real. You don't need to be mystical to be meaningful. You just need to be seen for who you are, not what the world wants you to be. You've probably carried these lies for a long time, not because you believed them at first, but because they were repeated so often, they started to sound like truth. They crept into your relationships, into your work, into your own self-talk, until one day you started wondering if maybe you really were too much or not enough. But now you know better. These were never your truths. They were the world's misunderstandings, projected onto someone who simply feels, thinks, and lives more deeply than most people are used to. You don't have to carry those stories anymore. You don't have to explain yourself to people who only listen with half their heart. You don't have to shrink to make others comfortable. And you don't have to be strong all the time just to be worth something. You are not too sensitive. You are not unrealistic. You are not cold, confusing, or impossible to understand. You are human, complex, thoughtful, deep, and deserving of being seen clearly, not through someone else's fear or confusion, but through your own truth. So ask yourself, which of these lies hit you the hardest? And what would it feel like to finally let it go? Because maybe the most powerful thing an INFJ can do is not be rare or perfect or endlessly giving, but to be honest. First with yourself, then with the world.